My name is Guy Lefnu, and I am the Education Advisor for Sightsavers, an international development organisation working in the fields of health, education and social inclusion. On the subject of inclusive learning for children with disabilities, firstly, my thoughts on that would be that we're not just, if we're talking about inclusive learning, we're not just talking about children in mainstream schools. We should also be thinking about children in special schools, because there are quite extensive systems of special schooling in many low-income countries. And I think we're also thinking about inclusive learning from early childhood onwards. And I think this is a very important and complex subject which has not been nearly researched enough. So I think we need to know a lot more about how children, particularly children with educationally complex impairments, can be effectively included in schools. And what are the ways in which that can be done? And it's partly a matter of looking at pedagogy, but it's looking about the whole way that schools work, and it's looking about the interactions between systems, between schools and communities, and also how education systems more broadly can support that process. And I don't think there's been nearly enough research on this. There is a danger sometimes that people make quite strong generalizations about what works and what doesn't work. But I think there is a real need for more studies of actual teaching and learning in real life situations. And I think it would be very, very important to get the child's perspective on this, and also to get the perspective of other local stakeholders, teachers, community members, etc. And I'm speaking really as someone who's working in international development, because we really, if we are going to engage responsibly in international development, we really have to have as good an understanding as possible of what works and what doesn't work. And I think a lot more research needs to be carried out. Particularly, I'm thinking of early childhood care and education, which seems to be an increasing development priority, secondary education and tertiary education. I'll make one other point, that I've just been looking at 100 studies published in an international journal looking at inclusive education. And it is very, very noticeable that there are I wasn't able to find one of those studies which had been carried out in Central Africa, an area of particular economic disadvantage and where education systems are really struggling. Only 7 of those studies looked at West Africa. And there were certain countries which weren't covered at all, even though they've been the centre of a lot of international development effort, such as Pakistan, such as Afghanistan, such as Iraq. So I think we need to have a much better and a much more comprehensive understanding. And I would also say that we need to know about generic approaches which can be applied across a classroom, but we also need to know more about the specific approaches which will benefit children with specific types of impairment.